Chuck Black, and this is the Age of Ingenuity, our weekly chronicle of Canada's current innovation economy. We've got some good stories this week, but many of those stories will also focus on concerns over recent declines in our domestic innovation infrastructure. And most of that decline will be caused by our response to the coronavirus pandemic.
And I'm Brian Arlotti, and here are a few of those stories. And first up is a piece from The Logic titled COVID-19 Roundup, Counting to 30%. This is an article written by several people, and the portion we are concerned with is here, what Ottawa has to offer. Startups and high-growth companies continue to worry they won't be eligible for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, CEWS, because of a requirement they show their monthly revenue has declined year over year. Joseph Fung, CEO of Waterloo-based Kite, told The Logic that the rule doesn't capture how many tech companies, particularly software-as-a-service subscription ones like his, operate. We've all seen some cancellations, but we're not likely to see a sudden 30% drop in revenues, he said. Instead, future sales evaporate because people delay and cancel buying decisions. And unlike, say, a wireless service provider, fast-growing firms and scale-ups have already made investment decisions based on those anticipated future sales. As a general rule, those future sales are fairly predictable and manageable, said Fung. So we raise money from investors to hire a lot of people to help make them happen.
It's also worth noting that a lot of new startups are less than a year old. It's absolutely impossible for them to show a 30% decline in income from the previous year. And I think there's a larger issue in here as well. It's hard to tell in advance of a startup success whether or not the startup is actually a useful company. 20 years ago, I was in Texas. I hung around a place called Austin Ventures for a bit of time. And nobody who worked there, and Austin Ventures was like the fourth largest investment capital firm in the US at the time. Nobody there could really tell in advance which of the companies they funded would actually make money in the long run. They always assumed that 7 would immediately die, no matter how good the idea seemed. And 2 of them would sort of carry on, but never break out into the big time. But that one company out of 10 would pay for all the other companies, pay for everybody's salary, and allow most of the principals to retire rich. But nobody could tell in advance what's going on. And now we're in a predicament where the federal government in Canada and the governments of other nations are required to decide in advance who's deserving and who's not. That's a really hard job.
And changing tack from supporting corporations to supporting individuals, a piece from Behind the Numbers by David McDonald titled, Which Unemployed Canadians Will Get Support? New federal policies are being created and adapted daily to try and head off the worst-case economic impacts of COVID-19. Many of these modifications are in reaction to advocates pointing out pitfalls in the proposed emergency measures. As these programs unfold, I've been tracking how well they cover laid-off workers who are bearing the economic brunt of the closure of complete sectors. Between March 25th and April 6th, the space of only a week and a half, the employment insurance system is being retooled to deliver a Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, CERB, equivalent that emulates most of the CERB conditions. For 84% of the workers who've been laid off in the past 2 weeks, the CERB and CERB equivalent systems will provide a higher benefit rate than old EI. This will be a better deal for many workers, particularly lower wage ones with fewer hours.
And we all got to live, particularly in this economy. We need to support not just the organizations, the corporations, and the innovative startups, but we need to support the people. If we all starve, we certainly can't contribute to the solution.
Absolutely. And continuing the theme of supporting individuals as opposed to corporations, a passage from passage.com. The CERB excludes too many people. It must be fixed. The government's flagship, and this article is by Taylor Skolon, The government's flagship COVID-19 benefit will do nothing for many Canadians who need help now. The benefit was touted last week as a direct benefit of $2,000 per month to help all those who had lost their income due to the COVID-19 crisis, a substantial improvement on the two separate benefits the government has initially announced. Unfortunately, the text of the legislation confirms that many Canadians who need relief will not benefit from the program. These exclusions stem from the CRERB's eligibility criteria, which extends support only to those who meet each of the following requirements. 1, had a total income of at least $5,000 in 2019 or the 12-month period preceding their application date. 2, stop working for 14 consecutive days within the 4-week period for which they apply for the CERB for reasons related to COVID-19. 3, do not receive any income whatsoever during those 14 days. And 4, did not stop working voluntarily.
I can't help but note that those restrictions seem to affect most self-employed workers, people in the gig economy, students and recent graduates. Those are essentially the people who are going to start new companies, who are going to try new and innovative things, who are going to contribute to new ideas, to fun things. The people who are most likely to create innovative ideas and carry them through to the marketplace are the people who are most likely to be excluded under this program.
Agreed, and it's more than a little ironic that with many pundits touting the gig economy as the future of work, that at the sign of a first major disaster such as coronavirus, that these people would be cast adrift and left to fail on their own. That to me seems more than a little ironic and doesn't bode well for the future. Also, I think it's important that I share that a member of my family recently transitioned from the food industry, the restaurant industry, over to logistics, which is labeled an essential industry and has been permitted to stay open and is even thriving in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Logistics being very important now to ship items to people. Had she stayed in the restaurant industry, she'd be at home now, frantically applying for EI. And continuing on the theme of supporting corporations versus individuals, our next piece comes from The Logic, titled "Nearly $200 million in tax credits for tech firms delayed amid COVID-19." Nearly $200 million in tax credits for tech companies are delayed amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and CEOs are warning they'll need to lay off workers if the money doesn't come soon. Ottawa has rolled out a host of emergency assistance programs for businesses over the past 2 weeks. In an effort to minimize the burden on companies dealing with the economic fallout from the spread of the coronavirus, the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, announced on March 18th it would suspend most audits of businesses for 4 weeks.
And the article goes on to note that any company scheduled to be audited is not eligible to receive any money from the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Credit. This is a 34-year-old program that annually distributes upwards of $5 billion into innovative companies right across Canada. So it's a problem. It's money that these organizations, these small companies, these innovative people have planned for and they want to use going forward. And they've been denied it, at least for the next month, it seems.
And our next piece from the New York Times drives home the point that maybe all of this has happened before and all of it will happen again. COVID-19 changed how the world does science together. Never before, scientists say, have so many of the world's researchers focused so urgently on a single topic. Nearly all of their research has ground to a halt. This piece is by Matt Apuzzo and David D. Kirkpatrick. Using flag-draped memes and military terminology, The Trump administration and its Chinese counterparts have cast coronavirus research as national imperatives, sparking talk of a biotech arms race. The world's scientists, for the most part, have responded with a collective eye roll. Absolutely ridiculous, says Jonathan Heaney, a Cambridge University researcher working on a coronavirus vaccine. That isn't how things happen, said Adrian Hill, the head of the Jenner Institute at Oxford, one of the largest vaccine research centers at an academic institution. While political leaders have locked their borders, scientists have been shattering theirs, creating a global collaboration unlike any in history. Never before, researchers say, have so many experts in so many countries focused simultaneously on a single topic and with such urgency. Nearly all other research has ground to a halt.
I also think it's important to note the April 4th, 2020 Logic post, letter from the editor. Whatever happened to the innovation agenda, which notes that one of the core platforms in the federal Trudeau government campaign promises over the last two elections has primarily been what they call the innovation agenda, the idea that the federal government can spend enough money to encourage innovative companies to grow new ideas, new plans, and better ways of doing things. That seems to have gone by the wayside, at least according to this article. I also think it's important to note things like the April 2nd, 2020 Law 360 post. COVID-19 could be a make or break for legal tech companies. Which to me means that lawyers are suffering just the same as all the rest of us. It's good to make the lawyers suffer.
And our next stories change tack to good news amidst all the bad news these days. This first piece from Auto Week: Mercedes F1 re-engineers CPAP mask for COVID-19 in less than 100 hours. The new device, built by Mercedes F1 engineers, could be used instead of ventilators on some coronavirus patients. By Jake Lingeman. Big problems require big minds, and some of the biggest minds in our field are the ones creating Formula One race cars. When they switch over to medical production, things begin to happen fast. In less than 100 hours, championship team Mercedes F1 re-engineered a continuous positive airway pressure, or CPAP, device to be used for coronavirus patients. As of yesterday, it has been recommended for use by the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, according to a CNN report. CPAP devices have already been used in China and Italy to treat the virus, with reports that half of such patients have avoided the need for ventilators. Unlike ventilators, these masks can be quickly mass-produced.
This is a reminder that entire industries focused on things like automobiles or in other areas are swiveling, changing, twirling around on a dime and focusing their skills and their abilities on COVID-19, looking for solutions.
Agreed. And on a personal note, I myself use a CPAP device to treat my sleep apnea, and I can testify that they are powerful little pieces of technology. A powerful yet silent air pump in a very small package that you can take with you pretty much anywhere. So they are remarkable devices.
Agreed.
And those are the stories we're covering this week. As always, the articles we've referenced are listed in the show notes below.
If you'd like to promote your event or your activity, or if you think you have insight into Canada's current innovation economy, please send us an email. Send it to me at chuck.black@protonmail.com. And that's all for this week. We'll be back next week with more stories covering our current age of ingenuity.